All right, can everybody hear me? Fantastic. You ready to talk about the roadmap after Tim's talk? Fantastic. All right, so a quick introduction. I'm Kate Alpert, Senior Director of XNAT Product and Engineering at Flywheel. I've been part of the XNAT community since 2008, first at Northwestern University and then moving to Radiologics before we merged with Flywheel. And I'm just so thrilled to see lots of familiar faces, some 3D faces for the first time, and also so many new faces. It's really exciting. I have to say I'm a little disappointed that we are experiencing rain instead of snow here. I left 22 inches of powder back in Aspen, but I brought my neon green 3-layer membrane rain jacket so that you will be able to find the mountain town gal from America in the pub later. So what are we going to cover here? I kind of felt like I drew the short straw with this time slot having to present after lunch with raging jet lag. But on the other hand, what's more fun to talk about than the roadmap? So we're going to review that, both the near-term focus and then also looking out over the next 4 years of the R01. But in hopes that I don't lose you to a digestive catnap, I also want to hear from you. I want this to be an open forum for discussion, and so I've got some polling options that will hopefully work for me nicely here. So we'll dive into that. We really want to hear from the community. So our near-term focus is primarily split along 2 dimensions. The first of those is features aimed at extensibility for the end user. So in contrast to developer-facing extensibility that you have via the plugin architecture, we've been really interested in those features that allow you to just pop open the web app and customize things to your liking. And then non-functional requirements to ensure quality. And if you're not familiar with the term non-functional requirements, stay tuned, we'll talk about it. Before we dive in, I do want to contextualize our near-term extensibility focus with a bit of XNAT history. So, we don't always use the acronym anymore. The Extensible Neuroimaging Archive Toolkit, as Dan mentioned, the N is really not so instrumental anymore. We'll hear some great project presentations in just a little bit to hear about all the diverse, awesome use cases for the platform. And frankly, at some point, we could probably drop imaging altogether. We also have great support for non-imaging data, but then we're stuck with an unpronounceable platform like XNAT. I don't know, so we're sticking with it, XNAT. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the extensibility. So over time, we've evolved from a somewhat developer-dominated extensibility environment to one that aims to really surface this flexibility to end users. So in 1.6, you're really seeing the value of an open source platform. You can dive in, you can customize the code. I used to do this all the time, Dan's like, no one wants to get into the XNAT code. I'm like, why? I used to do that. I don't. He's like, yeah, you work for us now. But these customizations, you had to fork XNAT core or the pipeline engine. This was great until the core team made some updates and you had to go through this nasty manual merge process. It took forever. Not ideal. In 1.6, there were great user-facing customizations as well around naming. If you didn't want to call it a project, if you wanted to call it a study, XNAT's fine with that. Default searches, you can customize the searches that show up on your project page. Custom variables, permissions, custom user groups. But in 1.7, customizability just went to the next level with plugin injection. So now you can manage your custom plugins. They hook right into the monolith and work seamlessly. And you can maintain these as isolated repositories. They interact with XNAT via well-defined Java APIs. And it's much easier now to stay up to date with core changes. But as Simon mentioned, plugins are not really aware of one another. They can be, but not by default. It can be really tricky when you want to customize the front end. If there's not an injection point through which to do that, suddenly you're overriding velocity pages. That's not great. So we definitely have some work to do here, and I'll get there. Also in 1.7, the container service comes along, and this is just so much easier than the pipeline engine as a means of both dynamically configuring a processing launch UI, so you can write some JSON and that turns into a dynamically generated form. And then leverage, of course, any published container image for processing with setup and wrap-up containers. You can even just use someone else's container, a bids app or something out of the box and have XNAT work with it just through those kind of bookends. So this was a huge leap forward in terms of user-facing customizability. 1.8 continues in this vein. Tim talked about a lot of the great ways that, with dynamic routing and all kinds of things that you can do. I think really the biggest change here was the event service. And suddenly you can configure actions to be triggered based on events. And so it's not just request-driven, but event-driven. So continuing in this line of emphasizing user-facing extensibility, we have some near-term features that I'm excited to highlight. I'm going to move through these somewhat quickly, but rest assured, day 3 emerging feature demos are going to dive into almost all of these things. So this is really just to whet your appetite. Custom forms. So we're offering a WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, form builder to dynamically define the attributes that you wish to collect for a particular XNAT data type. This is really slick, really nice, no more of those display documents. It integrates seamlessly with the search engine in XNAT. You don't have to modify XML or use clunky custom variables, but you still have to hang these on an existing data type. As Tim mentioned, we're aware that it would be really slick if you didn't have to have an existing data type and could just dynamically generate that too. We have a POC with that functionality, so look for it in the nearish future. And finally, federation ready. As we build this feature, we have federation top of mind. So we really want these forms to be interchangeable across XNAT sites. Jupyter Notebooks. This is coming from IC3R funding at WashU with support from Flywheel. So with Jupyter Notebooks integration, you can launch and manage your notebooks straight from XNAT. You can stage data, do science, seamless transition. And there's also that's sort of the data science use case. There's another persona that we're kind of interested in targeting here, and that is being able to quickly prototype custom user interface. And so with a notebook, you can kind of do a presentation mode where you're actually letting the user interact with the notebook as if it were just a form. So another way to put that user-facing customization out to the world. Really, really thrilled to get this out to you and see what you think. The viewer's got a lot of great stuff coming thanks to the ICR and NCETA team with whom we've been collaborating closely. We've got the measurement service allowing you to persist, so import and export everything that used to be in the annotations menu. It's now called measurements, links, bounding boxes, all that stuff. We've got the AI-assisted annotation integration with Monai Label, so bringing the latest Monai tools into the viewer. And we've also done some work to ease the bottleneck in generating metadata that powers the viewer. So that can sometimes be problematic if you have massive sessions, hundreds of thousands of files. Aiming to make that a little more smooth. More activities in 3D. So this is contouring and masking in all 3 planes. 3D surface rendering. We also want to integrate with those custom forms right in the viewer. So in this snapshot, you're seeing a little QA panel at the bottom, something like that would be really, really slick, really nice. And microscopy support, whole slide imaging, and more. We have a unified OpenID plugin. So this is integrating core from the Australia Image Service, Pixie support, and streamlined UI customization. We've got a Monai template container for use with the existing XNAT ML, and that's coming from i3CR at WashU. Pick your framework. Additional Kubernetes feature support in container service. This is persistent volumes, image labels to node constraints, more in-app management instead of ops side configuration. Anonymization profiles and DICOM edit. So the idea here is that potentially you want to do kind of larger conditionals where you're saying like, well, if it's a CT, I want to anonymize these things, but if it's MR, I want to do this. And we are aiming to have that be federation ready. So you could actually import another anonymization script, perhaps from a common repository, and apply that. So as we're building these things, really, keeping federation top of mind, keeping that end user customizability really at the fore. So non-functional requirements. Does the Austin Powers joke land in the UK? I wasn't sure. So what's a non-functional requirement? In contrast to functional requirements, which are defining what a system does, what are its functions, the non-functional requirements specify how a system does it. And they're absolutely imperative to ensure a positive, productive, secure experience with the product. So these are kind of the quality attributes of the system, the IDs, security, accessibility, observability, maintainability, reliability, performance. Absolutely critical. Also, not exactly as sexy as the feature work, but we really want to be sure to prioritize them. So on the near-term roadmap in this area, we want to tackle some tech debt. XNAT has been around for 20 years. That's phenomenal. We've learned a ton. We also have some cruft that we'd really like to address. So particularly enhanced horizontal scalability, as Tim was mentioning, a distributed cache in particular, dependency updates, get Spring up to date, and some performance optimizations. We've been hard at work enhancing our automated test suites, really have done a ton of work in this vein, but we have more to do, especially on that performance side. And we want to streamline deployment. We're still kind of offering you a Vagrant, we're offering you Docker Compose. The Australian Image Service has contributed a Kubernetes Helm chart, so we're looking to work from that, also have a development and production environment there. Improve instrumentation and metrics collection. So, it's absolutely critical to understand how our system is performing out in the wild. And to do this, we need some means of collecting metrics from you. We get a quantitative truth there, and it's also really useful for us to understand what people are doing with the system and how it's performing under all the diverse real-world loads that you put it through. It's also great locally for local monitoring. So, you want to have some alerting so you can be proactive. And before users are reporting a problem to you, you have a sense that something's funky and maybe you want to look into it. And then optimizing the software development lifecycle. This has been a great area of collaboration with the Flywheel Enterprise team. I think the first thing here that I'm really eager to do is move to a mono repo, having the kind of sprawling repository structure that we had while, appealing for some reasons around, flexibility, maintainability, isolating concerns, just proves to be really arduous when we're trying to release. And it also prevents us from having some really robust CI, running our automated tests on pull requests and things like that. Trunk-based development branching. This will move us kind of in the direction of continuous deployment. Increasing our release cadence. You may have noticed we've been trying to bump this up a little bit with some quarterly releases. Another thing that I wanted to kind of call to your attention here, and maybe you noticed in my previous slides, Custom Forms MVP, Jupyter Notebooks MVP. We want to build these features and get them to you quickly so that we can hear how they're landing. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What do you need more of? If we kind of keep these in-house for a really long time until we feel like they're perfect, we might be building the wrong thing. So we're really trying to increase this release cadence to get things to you sooner. We can use feature flags to sort of turn on and off these more experimental features. And for example, with custom forms, we plan to release that alongside custom variables. So you're using custom variables, that's great. We don't want to interrupt that with this new experimental thing, this MVP, but we'll give you a path for migration. We'll let you experiment with it a little bit. Tell us what you need. So I'm really excited about this kind of shift in focus. And I think all of this is going to really pave the way for more community contributions. I don't know if you've ever made a pull request to core XNAT, but sometimes they sit in purgatory for a little while. And I think this really allows us both to scale on the Flywheel side, but also to receive from the community. And that is supporting DevOps. It's been really exciting to focus on the DevOps methodology to make the ambitious roadmap that I'm about to talk to you about really possible. So this allows us to be more efficient, more responsive, and ever improving. As Tim mentioned, we're benefiting from a lot of the phenomenal experience of the merged teams here. So I really want to emphasize it's been awesome to have more eyes and more brains on this transformation in the way we work. Before I move on to the faraway future, I hope over the last few slides, the value of the XNAT community felt really evident. There was a lot of blue in there, contributions, working together. At Flywheel, we're one piece of a larger whole, and we want to not only acknowledge this, but celebrate it, encourage more of it. Only in working together can we make XNAT everything that it can be. So thank you so much. Really excited for what we're about to put out to the world and really excited for this longer-term future. So what's next? Kermit's excited. What are our longer-term goals? We want to modernize the XNAT platform architecture to simplify the code base, enable faster development cycles, improve those NFRs, maintainability, security, scalability, performance. We want to expand our core capabilities with a real focus on integrations. We want to develop new XNAT capabilities that leverage our integrations. And we want to support and grow the XNAT community. So in terms of modernizing the platform architecture, we have some pretty ambitious goals. So we want to overhaul the UI. It's feeling a little dated. You got to go make a bunch of clicks, go through a lot of different pages. We're interested in a new archive management service. So this is abstract storage, not just files, object storage, S3, perhaps even kind of an overlay on your PAX, your VNA, or direct to another XNAT or Flywheel for that matter. Direct database tracking of files, so no more catalog files. This allows improved versioning and also potentially billing. And native zip support, so no longer will we make you extract your DICOM into sprawling individual directories with 300,000 files. A new database management service. So the first step here would be replacing XFT, which was really phenomenal work, but with a standard ORM. There are tools now that people are really familiar with using. It's hard to make them learn something totally custom at this point. But we also want to explore database technologies. So someone had asked about CDB, horizontally scalable relational database, definitely on the radar. But I think we would also, want to do a little bit of investigation here. And, what about NoSQL? What about a graph database? Multi-provider compute. So container execution across multiple platforms, and this would facilitate, having different users, different projects, going to different queues so that you could throttle, so that you could prioritize. Really exciting in an area of very much collaboration with the Flywheel Enterprise team. These are ambitious. XNAT's been around for a long time. We have a tech debt, as I mentioned, and these changes are really more than tweaks. They replace substantial components of the platform. So we want to be really mindful of how we're proceeding here. We know that this stuff needs to happen, but we want to be judicious about approaching it, given our resources. So we're assessing, and we really want to hear from you about what matters most, and we'll have an opportunity to opine here shortly. But most of all, we want to shape a sustainable platform for which the open source community plays an active role in maintenance and development. We can't do this alone. We need to work together. Oh, federation ready, multi-part compute. Oh, and monolith to microservices. So we tried to do this a little bit with breaking the repositories, but as I mentioned, it kind of ended up just giving us this sprawling infrastructure. If we could move from this monolith where you have to build plugins to tie into it, as opposed to having microservices that communicate over lightweight protocols and are very independently maintainable and isolated, it would be a real boon. So, expanding XNAT core capabilities. This is facilitating integrations via flexible tooling. And I think it's mainly along 3 dimensions. Consistent and well-documented RESTful APIs. So again, here, we have some cruft from RESTlets, and then we move to XAPI, and so can we kind of get all that in one format that's really well-documented, also supporting DICOM Web. Robust SDKs. XNAT Pi has been obviously awesome in this space, but it's really important for developers to just, come with their native language and not have to comb through API documentation, but just interact with that language as they normally would. And then webhooks to support event-driven instead of request-driven interactions with the platform. So this diagram is showing a prototype integration with Typeform, such that adding a little lightweight config facilitates data collection via a tried and true external service while leveraging the XNAT core for data storage and management. And how about new XNAT capabilities? So user-facing work lists to stream manual task-oriented activities. This would be like the rapid reader in the viewer with hanging protocols. Portable user workspaces for cohort building, exploration, and processing. So this is both like a stored filter, creating that workspace, and then a snapshot of the data that matched that filter at the time that you ran it. And we would really leverage the lessons we learned with the dataset builder and XNAT ML here. Orchestration workflow engine supporting complex multi-stage pipelines, including human-in-the-loop tasks. And then bringing it all together with what we've been calling productivity applications. So XNAT is extensible, it's flexible, that's really, really excellent, but it can also be a little complex. And so the idea with these productivity applications is that we could really target them toward a particular user workflow. And instead of a plugin, which kind of goes into the monolith, requires particular integration points, and can, essentially kind of adds complexity there. These would be these really targeted applications to allow developers to meet particular needs. And an example of that would be ML Studio, which is sort of prototyped here in this diagram. Lastly, we want to support and grow the XNAT community. Outreach, workshops and hackathons, check. It's like, here we are. But of course, we're not done. These are awesome, and we want to keep having them. Attending conferences, social media presence, documentation and support. We're looking to do some updating of our xnat.org documentation. We also moderate the discussion group, and it's really phenomenal there to participate, but also just see the great support that the community gives to one another. Continuing to build out our XNAT Academy content with virtual lab courses. And most importantly, I think, promote and integrate code and documentation contributions. So, feedback, critical part of DevOps. As Yoda says, it's instrumental to learning and productive adaptation. We can build the best software in the world, but if it doesn't meet the needs of our users, we're not succeeding. So I was hoping now to kind of shift from presenting to facilitating. So I'm going to, encourage some side conversations, let you guys talk amongst yourselves, and maybe not just questions from the audience, but answers from the audience. I'm hopefully going to use a tool called Slido that will let you scan a QR code, go to a website, enter some comments. If it fails miserably, we'll resort to holding up our pads of paper or something. Figured we'll give it a try. So I'm going to put up a prompt. I'll leave it up for 10, 15 minutes. You can talk. You can maybe form a group and enter your feedback. So what should be easier to do in XNAT? Hit that QR code. Talk about it. one person's doing it. I have it in the slides, but I'd have to go back. I guess we could probably flip back while we. I also don't know what this is going to look like when we have like 90 responses. So it looked great with the 5 that I submitted. Yes. Yeah. Well, you can sign in if you want your name up there. Yeah. Create new data types for sure. Data integrity check. AI. Both de-identification, yeah. Examples in the documentation. Oh. Dan's got your number. Microservices. Does anybody want to talk more about their submission here while we let people? Oh, that's right. That's right. Or, well, you could talk about someone else's. We've all seen them now. Is extending XNAT without plugins like the productivity apps I was talking about, or is that like the user-facing customizability? Scripts?
Someone has noted breast-based plugins. Is that a thing that make plugins easier without having to do a
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of microservices where you can use your environment of choice. Common data models, yeah, that's been a big item of discussion lately with regard to integrating with the Flywheel APIs.
Is OMOP, I don't know who put that one in, but is OMOP a thing people are seeing out there as a common data
Standard, a real standard. Is OMOP something that people are seeing out as a common data standard? Used at UCL? I feel like that's been a tricky thing about standards in sort of the imaging space, is that they don't get a broad enough adoption. There's too many of them. Yeah. Yeah, so the additional load scheduler options, that's the multi-provider compute that we were talking about, not being tied to Docker or Kubernetes Swarm APIs. Another OMOP. Yeah, and with more project level metadata, that will be, custom forms will let you hang a form on the project at the project level, and you can customize anything you want to collect.
Different to what you upload, like in the manage file section, where you upload any data.
So this would be a metadata collection about the project, and so when you create a new project, you would fill out those fields. You could collect IRB number, you could collect usage guidelines. Mm-hmm.
Out of curiosity, I know you guys can export to bits, but can you import from bits at all? And pull metadata from like the TSVs and the JSONs?
Yeah, so we do. We have a proprietary plugin that does that. It actually leverages another proprietary plugin that integrates with S3. So you can, if you have either a local bids or a bids directory in S3, you can ingest from there. But I don't think we've open sourced it yet.
When you're talking about the forms, does that cover radiology reports if somebody's looking at images?
Absolutely. Yep. So custom forms can hang on any XNAT data type. So if you had a just kind of skeleton rad reads data type, and then you hung a custom form on it, and then you integrated with the OHIF viewer to have that form rendering right in the viewer, and collected your rad read right live alongside the image.
Are you going to show the RAD report and all the custom forms the day 3 as towards the future?
Simon, do you have forms in the viewer demo on day 3? No. I have like a really bare bones QA assessor I could show you, but
Wow. So there's a forms in the rapid reader, but it's the sort of
the legacy. Yeah. All right, couple more people typing, and then maybe we can move on to the next. And I am, by the way, storing the responses here, so we'll keep track of them. I feel like the Slido category is struggling a little bit. We got non as a category.
Is it still the case that there's a single instance of XNAT you couldn't use for anonymization? There was always concern that something's happened with the log files now. We moved past that as a case of, I think the workaround is we have 2 instances of an XNAT, so one is an identifier.
Yeah.
Push it on, is that still the case?
Well, so I think it is a common pattern to have sort of a high risk and low risk separate XNAT installations. I think there can be some PHI logged if it's in file names and you're uploading via the compressed uploader. File names, if you are not renaming, can also be in the received log coming from the scanner directly. So I would say potentially it depends on your workflow. I think you could design a workflow where you wouldn't need to do that. All right. What's missing in XNAT? So we talked about what's hard. What would you like to see in the platform that isn't there? Nothing is missing in XNAT. Is it not working? Yeah.
Guys submitted something.
Yeah.
Missing it.
Is it coming through here? No. Well, we got one poll. Do you want to just tell me? Yes.
I mean, for a lot of the applications that people are using, so DICOM is a source of most of what we are doing, but then we've got other formats that are kind of modular. So it would be nice to have a tighter Nifty integration. I know I'm coming back to that every year, so I should just do it. But tighter Nifty integration, whether it's from the viewer or from the REST side, so that's the moment. Nifty, I mean, it's just to glorify FTP.
Mm-hmm.
We are, or at least the way I am using XNAT with Nifties, and it's something that I think is used by quite a lot of people. So I mean, Nifty or any of the ITK formats or some of the popular that are stored for images would be nice.
So first class Nifty support, viewer,
Or,
archive.
or some more integration to start with.
Yeah.
We also want the MHD format from the
Yeah, no, that's what I'm
that's what we
completely biased towards Nifty. So being selfish, I would say only Nifty, but ITK format.
You want
like
every
say, yeah, but let's start with Nifty.
I think the data integrity check, as I was talking to you,
Mhm.
is also, and this is from the research perspective, it is guiding many of the researchers because they're collecting the data from many sources, and people are very, very creative, and they send you the data with the de-identification. Some post the data, some even delete the tag, some all kind of stuff. So if there's a conformance, or I can say that I need a patient name, even if it's a de-identified, I need my timing tags, I need XYZ tags so that I can post-process the data for which I'm collecting this information. Then I will save a lot of time for the non-technical people who are going to use the XNAT. I think that will be quite impactful in my opinion.
So this is an integrity check or verification prior to ingestion into the platform. And then would you want to, within the platform, do corrections on that data or just kind of flag it and send it back so that you could send it back to the source?
I think the low-hanging fruit would be at least you can flag it out because you need the time. You can't put the timing tag, acquisition time, and other series time
Mm-hmm.
because you need it for the integrity of your clinical trial of the research project. So I will flag it.
I'd also like to see protocol validation come back in a more modern sense. And maybe being able to choose a scan that you know is the right archetype for the protocol and say, this is the template to use.
So protocol validation with kind of a gold standard. We actually are working on that.
NC to have, we have research anyway. Sam over there has been doing fantastic work with other people on the NC team. We have protocol checker container.
Great. So get with ICR and NCTA at the hackathon. Yes.
So maybe improved way of, I don't know how to formulate it, but improved way of doing search, data search in XNAT. Because what I hear a lot from people that are not too experienced with it and don't want to spend 10 years to know everything about the XNAT API, is that in order to find a scan, you kind of need to know where is the scan. So you need to go to project, you need to go to patient, session, and
Mhm.
scan, and then potentially look at the metadata. So it would be nice if we were able to say, okay, give me all of the T1 weighted with this pulse sequence parameter from patients that are aged between this year or this age and this year, and then with this pathology, and then being able to retrieve all of this information.
You can still do that if you go through all the data sets and look
Yeah,
into the
yeah, no, but
partnerships.
not everything is exposed, and we can, or well, people that are experienced with it, it's gonna, I mean, they will know how to do it. Or you can do that through the REST, and that's only a few lines of code, but it's more the feedback that we've got from users that are not really developer on the XNAT front. And then if there is some, I don't know, rejects capability or anything that would make it a bit easier, rather than having to click on a lot of different places that might can be done effectively. Everything that was on the list, some of us are doing it, but it's not as part of the vanilla. It's customization that we further do.
No, but if I understand your question correctly, does that mean you want to search a particular modality, particular series name into the system, right?
Yes, that was just an example. So I know that you can search from the scans, then you can look at some of the metadata, TRT and all of that if that's MR. You can join the table with the clinical, but that's that's not really intuitive. It takes quite a bit of time, and some people are saying like, actually, just get me all of the data outside of XNAT and I do the search on my own because they don't have the simple capacity to do it within XNAT.
Elevate that. Elevate the cohort building capability.
Yep, so search that doesn't require knowledge of the XNAT data model. I think that's definitely something that we've been investigating on the Flywheel Discovery side, a really user-facing cohort builder with, access to millions of data points. Well, I found your responses, but it's in this kind of hard to read sidebar. See if I can get back to the next one. Okay, but now I've lost my developer. Sorry, folks. Why do you use XNAT instead of another tool or platform? So a lot of open source here, flexibility, features not found elsewhere, REST API. Okay. And what's your favorite thing about XNAT? So for this one, I swapped to a Q&A. So this, you can like upvote each other's answers. Maybe this one will present for me, even though I have those polls going. Let's give it a try. Yeah, here we go. I must have had to close the polls to collect.
But how do you collect the data from remote sites? Are you opening up XNAT for everyone on the without the two-factor authentication?
No, they have usernames and passwords,
That's only the one level of.
and then they can send the data from. So they send the data, like instead of having an FTP
Thanks so much for this feedback. And like I said, I am collecting it, even though it didn't quite display for me as I wanted on those last two polls. So we'll be reviewing it carefully. I also have another QR code for you. This is to a Google form that you can complete at your leisure, but it will allow us to get some feedback on the specific roadmap items that I discussed. I would recommend heading there sooner rather than later so that you kind of remember what I spoke about and can opine on where we're on the right track, what you think we're missing, where maybe you're like, I don't really care about that functionality, why are you building it? All feedback is awesome and welcome. All right, well, thanks very much, everyone.